Bueno, hoy theme 10, the lexicon characteristics of the word, formation in English, prefixation, suffixation, and composition. In this theme, what we're going to be looking at is first the difference or the definition of what is lexicon, lexicography, and lexicology, three different branches of linguistics. Each of them analyzes a different thing in according to different layers of linguistic layers, but they are all related one to another. This theme is particularly interesting and particularly important because it allows us to understand how can we form English words and vocabulary. Usually when we analyze with the students the composition of the words and the word formation, this is the theme that we deal with them in class. Usually, students don't pay much attention to word formation. They just learn by heart the words, and they have traditionally there were a long list of vocabulary which the students have to learn by heart without any reasoning about how the words were constructed. Nowadays, these approach have changed, and we've got this new grammar, or called the cognitive grammar, la gramática cognitiva, the cognitive grammar, which proposes the idea of making the students aware of what they are studying, and aware of how the language is formed and the structures that they use. So making them to reason and to understand the reason why those words are formed, or the reason why there is a particular word order or a particular word formation in this field. So that's why this theme, I believe, is very important for us as teachers, because allow us to give the basis of the lexis or the lexicon of the language. So basically, what we're going to be dealing with in these theme is first an introduction where we would explore the meaning of lexicography, what is lexicon, and the type of morphemes. You know that there are two types of morphemes: the bound morphemes, which are the ones who allow to form different words through the suffixes and the prefixes. Then there are two processes in word formation, which are called the macro processes and the micro processes. The macro processes are really attaching new suffixes or prefixes, or just roots to other words, or to just roots to form new words. And then we've got the micro processes, which is the other way around, which is shortening or using just the initial words to form a new word. We would end by looking at the conclusion and drawing certain conclusions regarding our education system, or how we give classes to education in class regarding this theme. And we'll also be looking at the bibliography and exploring the authors that I have used in order to make this theme. So basically, the first thing is to understand the differences between these three linguistic layers that we were looking at, which is the lexicon, lexicography, and lexicology. What is a lexicon, or what does it mean, lexicon? Lexicon is a collection of words that every language has, or every speaker has on the language. So usually lexicon is referred to the number of words that made up a language, and we may say that there are two levels of lexicon. The personal lexicon, that is the words that we can use the words that we use regarding one language and that we use personally in our speech, which may differ from other speeches or other people who have different words or have learned different words and express themselves with other words. belonging also to the same language. So that would be the personal lexicon. And then we have the language lexicon, which is the entire corpus of the language, which incorporates all the existing words into the language. Now, lexicon is also used to refer to familiar words of a specific subject or a specific profession. For example, I'm very fond of football, so I use the lexicon of football, which would include words such as friendly match, yellow card, penalty, pitch result, or draw. Now, all of these is also in a lexicon. We could agree that lexicon could be the semantical field. Could be related to what we call a semantical field. So words that usually have are related or belong to the same family, to the same aspect. So there are three domains when we analyze the language: the lexicon, lexicology, and lexicography. Well, the lexicon is basically the vocabulary of the words that made up the language. So English has its own lexicon, Spanish has its own lexicon. Then lexicology, which is the study of the relationships between words and the formation of words. And finally, the lexicography, which is the science of making dictionaries, glossaries, or, for example, the thesaurus. The thesaurus is just a dictionary where we can find or we look up words that have similar meanings. And just remember that when we talk about synonymy or antonymy, the words do not mean the same and do not have the same meaning. They have approximate meanings, but they do not mean the same. And this is because of the language economy rule, which we would see afterwards. Usually in a language, what we have is we use one term to define one thing in reality, whether it's a thing or an action or anything that regards our reality. So there might be words that means more or less the same, but they have different nuances. That's why it's important to have this lexicography done, because allow us to make the difference between the nuances between languages, between words. So lexicology and lexicography are basically not the same thing, because lexicology really regards and focuses on how we make up words. So this theme, number 10, basically is on lexicology more than lexicography. Although we're also going to look at certain aspects of lexicography, because everything is related. We relate the meaning of the words with the meaning of the meaning of the words are also defined by the word formation. So when we talk about lexicography, there are two ways of looking at it. On a practical approach or on a theoretical approach. It will regard on a practical approach refers to action of compiling, writing, or editing dictionaries. That is, in other words, the making of dictionaries. We're going to see in a minute an evolution of this making of dictionaries, which is also interesting to see this evolution of the crafting of dictionaries. But also there's a theoretical, and the theoretical refers more not to the fact of making the dictionary, but rather on how we select, on how we or the science that is behind the crafting of dictionaries. So the science or this approach of making dictionaries focuses more on the semantic, orthographic, syntactic, and even paradigmatic features of every word or the lexicon of the language. That is, so the theoretical lexicography would regard more not the fact of compiling words and say, hey, this new word has appeared, but rather on a study how we analyze this word and how we make it happen, or how we include this word into the dictionary, how we make this how we include it in the dictionary. And so from this idea of this scientific aspect of making dictionaries, then we craft the dictionaries. So the dictionaries that they include the category of the words, the pronunciation, the meaning of the word itself, and some synonyms, and then a sentence with an example showing how this word is used. Or there are some dictionaries like the pocket dictionaries that they just include if it's masculine or feminine, and then the explanation of the word. That difference between the big dictionary and the pocket dictionary, those would be the crafting dictionary, how we make the dictionaries. That would be done by the practical lexicography. But then the theoretical dictionary, the theoretical lexicography would be what to include, or how to include these all these aspects into a dictionary. Right, so what is the meaning of the word lexicography? Lexicography comes from the Greek term lexicos, which is referred to or is understood as a word, and grapho, the writing. So it really is the writing of the words, how we write words. So these aspect of lexicography really started with the Sumerians, who already had more or less a sort of different dictionaries that allowed the population to understand and to have a pattern of writing. And what the Sumerians had, there was a kind of a different charts, also called glosses, into which they classified words. So, regarding the evolution of the English language, what we have is certain linguists that have explored how to make a dictionary. The first of them was in the 17th century, Robert Cowdrey, who was the first one to compute and to collect the words that appear in the English language. And what he did was to classify the words according to their origin. They were Hebrew, Latin, French, or Old English words. So this first action of collecting words allowed him to write a sort of a book of 120 pages, where he ordered alphabetically the words and included an explanation of it. So this was the basis of the nowadays dictionaries in English. It's interesting to see that this action is going to set the basis of the later dictionaries, the famous dictionaries by Samuel Johnson in the 19th century. The next linguist, if you want to call it like that, was John Kersey in the 18th century, who wrote the Dictionary Anglo-Britannicum, when he also tried to summon and collect all the British words, including a definition of them and the way they were used in the daily life. Also, he decided to include words that were not typically used, and also there were kind of rare words, but he also wanted to include them. So in order to make a compilation of the entire English words of the language. Now, by the mid 18th century, Nathaniel Bailey published a 900 pages long dictionary called the Universal Etymological English Dictionary, where he included something new, which was the pronunciation and the etymology. So that meant that already in the mid 18th century, there was already this necessity or this preoccupation of making of the pronunciation of English words. We know that by the 16th century, as we saw last Saturday, there was this great vowel shift, and there was a sort of a change into the pronunciation of English, and most of them they need it's kind of a rule book where you could what you could see or you could know the different pronunciation of the words. Now, this is very important because in later on Victorian society, there's one book, the Pygmalion book, where written by Bernard Shaw, who actually uses the book as a way of making people aware of how to pronounce words or pronounce English words correctly. And this book, the Pygmalion, where we've got this famous linguist professor who tries to teach this young Daisy woman to speak properly and to speak like a woman of the high society. It's both basically based again on this researching or these etymological these lexicographies, researching and compiling actions, which allow us to understand how the English was pronounced. If we look at the evolution of English, we in this case we should also be looking at this evolution from the Old English to the modern English. These days, if you want to, the evolution of words, for example, in the case of like, in Old English, like, and this is something related to etymology, that's why I'm bringing this new concept here, is that like in the Old English period would be something like pronounced as leak, because the final E of the word implied that the vowel in between the consonants was an E long. So with these Old English meant that in Old English the pronunciation of like would be leak, like puerro. But with the great vowel shift, what we have here is this E long sound is going to be changed or shifted to the diphthong I. So that's why like and leak would turn into like. Now, all of these evolution of the language and the pronunciation of language is going to be included in the Nathaniel Bailey Universal Etymological English Dictionary. Now, interesting to understand that English also, as every word, has an evolution in pronunciation, and it's interesting to have them in here. So to analyze how the language evolves. Now, the next author that also was dedicating himself to the aspect of lexicography is Samuel Johnson in 1755, and this is probably the most well-known author trying to build up a dictionary where he offer an explanation of the meaning of words. And something that Samuel Johnson did and didn't do the others or his predecessors was that he included meanings, and he took from the best writers of the UK the words. So what he did was a great action, because what he did was if these are the best writers and they are using English as a mean of communication, why not taking these examples and trying to make people realize of what these words mean according to these great authors, because those authors really want use language as their own tool to produce or to make their speech or their writings really worth it. Something similar is what the Real Academia Española does again with the new words. They try to include the new words, into the dictionaries regarding the use by these great authors and by the great and so they try to copy the words used in the great authors, so to really give the appropriate meaning to the word. Now, Johnson also focused on the linguistic aspect, and he avoided pronunciation because there were a lot of different pronunciation at the time. So as you may find, English has a different kind of accents from the south, from the north to the south. The accents and the way of words are pronounced are completely different. So basically, what Johnson thought was, if I include a way of pronunciation, there was no received pronunciation at the time. There was no an accord on which pronunciation should be taught as the accord it was the English community arrived in the 20th century. So that's why he said, okay, because of this great vowel shift, there's still a lot of different ways of pronunciation. So I'm not going to include this pronunciation into the English dictionary. What I'm going to do is to include the examples and the meaning of the words, which is the important thing. So what did and something that Johnson included and as a particular thing was that he categorized the meaning of the words, and he also included the common meaning versus the metaphorical meaning, poetical meaning, familiar meaning, and burlesque meaning. Now, this was interesting also to understand where to use the language and in which context to use the language. So, in a way, Johnson did a very pragmatic analysis of language, because he explored the use of the words in different contexts, and he shared it through the dictionary. Now, the next lexicographer or the next linguist that developed a new dictionary was Noah Webster in 1828. Different to Samuel Johnson. Samuel Johnson published the dictionary in the UK, whereas Noah Webster, he published the dictionary in the USA. Now, what he did was to criticize Johnson for his inaccuracies in the spelling and the absence of a scientific method. Well, that is something understandable. Samuel Johnson wrote the dictionary in the 17th century, and still there was no any dictionary where the words were categorized, or there was a room to say when these words are correct or these words are not correct. So in a way, it was understandable, this criticism from Noah Webster. What Noah Webster did with his dictionary was something important, and that nowadays has had an impact on our society, on the English spelling, which is to make a difference between the spelling of the American English and the British English. Now, according to some linguists, this difference between the American and British English happened not because of just a fashion, but because America in the 19th century was receiving a vast immigration quotas, and many of these immigrants, they did not know how to speak English. So what the Americans took as a possible solution was to ease the language and to ease the spelling of the language. You know that English has many words where the letters are not pronounced, and so what they did was to ease the pronunciation by eliminating or just trying to modify some spellings, so to make things easier to understand, to learn. Now, something also Noah Webster included was the phonological alphabet, called nowadays as the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. By 1839, Thomas Richardson also published a new dictionary of English language, where he also focused more on the etymological point of view of the words. So that's the etymology, that's the word formation, to improve the understanding of the word and the families of words. Again, to explore the lexicon aspect of the language. Well, and by the end of the 19th century, Joseph Wright also wrote the English Dialect Dictionary, when he included words, different words coming from different English dialects in the UK, and he made a compilation of almost 200 years of different English language. Now here he had around 70,000 entries, and is sort of considered as a more of a historical dictionary rather than a dictionary for use. It's just a dictionary where he included all the words that were used from the Old English to, well, not from the Old English, probably from the Middle English onwards. And finally, we have the nowadays dictionaries based on the Concise Oxford Dictionary, which is the dictionaries that we use nowadays, which are dictionaries that explain us what we have. We have the explanation of the word, we have also the pronunciation of the word, and we also have 2 or 3 synonyms of the dictionary of the word. Now, there are now many dictionaries where we can consult in the internet, and many other web pages where we can look for dictionary for the meaning of the word. We've got the Oxford Dictionary, but also we've got the Cambridge Dictionary. We also have the Macmillan Dictionary. There's the word reference, which also allow us to have kind of a blog or a forum where people share different meanings of the word according to the nowadays used. And also we have the Lingui webpage where basically give us different definitions or different translations of the word, and we can understand the use of the word into different contexts. So the craft of making dictionaries has completely changed over the years and over the centuries. And nowadays, where there is the construction of the meaning of the words is more not is although there is the dictionaries are the place where we can look them up, or where we can look at the words up. We also can consult in different forums in the internet, and it's kind of a more social construction of the meaning. So nowadays, apart from the dictionaries, we also have the medias and the networks and the social networks, which allow us also to produce meanings. Well, so what is a word? The concept of word might be divided into 3 layers. First the orthographic, then the phonological, and then the lexical. The orthographic is the way the word is written, and is the thing, or what here I wrote is the thing of we write with the space at either end, so that's the number of letters a word has, and so the way we write that letter, whether it has G, H, T, whatever letter it has, is a conjunction or a set of words all together which has a meaning. That's the orthographic point of view. But then we have the phonological, which is how we pronounce the word. And in English, what happens is there's no a one-to-one correspondence between the grapheme and phoneme, as we saw the last Saturday. There are in English as well as in other languages. There are some set of letters that has just one sound, or that each is correspondent to one sound. This is the case of English, for example. The TH, which has 2 graphemes, T and the H, has a one is associated with one phoneme, the th, the fricative or the dental death. Then the third layer would be the lexical, refer as what the word would mean, and they're listed as separate words in the dictionaries. So that would be the meaning of the word itself. Now, what is a word? A word is is a conjunction of letters that refer to something in reality, and it's understandable by the general public. Now, words are combinations of different graphemes and graphemes which create first the roots and then the so-called morphemes. So a word basically is the result of a combination of the roots with the morpheme or just the roots. So what is then the question, the next aspect we need to explore is then the morpheme. The morpheme is the smallest meaningful unit of a grammatical analysis, and this is something important when I say the word grammatical, because morphemes is not related to the concept of lexical meaning, but rather to the grammatical meaning. So we have in the analysis of the words, we have to differentiate two layers. On one side, we've got the grammatical layer, which is the one which is analyzed through the roots and the morphemes, and then we have the lexical layer, which refers more to this meaning to the actual current meaning of the word. So we need to make the difference between these two aspects. Now here we are on our grammatical layer, where we use the morpheme as a smallest unit in grammar or in language that allow us to have or to build up a meaning. So, for example, the word likable, what we have is the first the word like. If you make the combination of the L, I, and K would be the root, and afterwards the E is just the silent E, which, as I said before, it was used to mark the E as a long E. Now, then we have other morphemes, which in this case is the suffix, which allow us to produce another category of the word, likely, or the prefix "un," which allow us to create a different category of word, unlikely, but with a different meaning. Well, and so regarding these definition of the morpheme, then we have two types of morphemes: the free morphemes and the bound morphemes. Now, the free morphemes are the ones who can be uttered alone and has got a meaning. In this case, would be like the current words having a meaning, like book, table, or listen. These words cannot be analyzed into lower level, because there's no way of making them lower. They're roots in itself. And the bound morphemes they do not have a meaning by itself. They require a root to have a meaning. In this case, we'll be looking at bound morphemes as the prefixes or the suffixes. Now, the prefixes and the suffixes also can be different. Can have these bound morphemes can be classified into the grammatical morphemes, which refer more to the endings of ed or s, which refers more to the if they are singular or plural, or present tense or past tense. And then we have the bound morphemes as such, which allow us also to refer to the creation of new words. So let's have a look at this diagram. We've got the morphemes, which are two types: the lexical and the grammatical. The lexical morphemes are they're called the roots, and that's why they would be they're called nouns, adjective, or verbs. That is, those that do not have any other decomposition of the word, so that do not allow any decomposition of the word. They just a combination of graphemes that means something and do not have any other morphemes attached to it. Then we've got the bound morphemes, the lexical bound morphemes, and the lexical bound morphemes are the ones who have a meaning, or that by combining them with a root change the meaning. And so, for example, here we would have the prefixes or suffixes. For example, officer. Well, officer, the ER would be a bound derivative morpheme, because it is changing the word of the, if we've got office, office would refer to the place, and officer would refer to the person working, or whether in the office or working at the military, or yes, or at the military or at the office. Then we have the other category, which is the grammatical morpheme, which also we have to distinguish between the three grammatical morphemes, which are those words that do not carry a meaning but do not carry essentially any meaning at all. They're just prepositions that allow us to build up the sentence and to allow us to have a transition from one lexical word to another. And then we have the grammatical bound morphemes, which allows to create the so-called past tense, present tense, the plural, or the masculine and feminine. Also denote a comparison to, or the, yes, comparison to, larger than, or the largest, and the est or the er also denote a comparison or superlative. Well, so we have ended with the first part of this theme. Now we would enter into the second part of the theme, which is the macro processes, the prefixes. Now, what is a prefix? A prefix is a bound morpheme that can't stand alone. They need to be attached to a root in order to have a meaning. Now, the prefixes also can change the meaning of the words, can make new words, but and this is something interesting in the English language. The prefixes don't usually change the intonation. The stress of the word. The ones who change the stress of the word are called the prefixes. And also, the prefixes do not change the category, the word's category. That is, if we attach a prefix to a noun, the noun might be also still be a noun. The type of prefixes that we have can be classified according to its meaning. So we have the size, macro, micro, the numerical, be or try, the attitude, anti, that is against to, the pejorative, pseudo, locative, sub, which is under, or trans, which is across, duplicative, which is making again, or the negative, which is expressed by the a, n, I, or ill, such as illegal, impossible, or immoral. Now, and the next one is the suffixes. The suffixes, which the features of the suffixes are. Again, like the prefixes, they cannot stand alone, that they haven't got a meaning by themselves. They are attached to the end of the word. They can change the meaning of the word and also can change the stress of the word. We saw last Saturday, that if we applied or if we join a suffix to the word, depending on the suffix and depending on the origin of the suffix, whether it's Latin, French, or German, it might change the stress of the word. We saw the difference between kingdom and fossilization. There's a very stupid word, but it's the one that has come to my mind. For example, kingdom, dom is not a Latin suffix, so it doesn't change the stress of the word. However, fossilization changes the stress of the word and attracts the stress towards the end. Fossil would be the word fossil, so the primary stress is in the first syllable, fossil, and then because we add the suffix Asian, which is a Latin suffix, it attracts the stress towards the end, fossilization. So as you see, the primary stress has changed from the first syllable, fossil, to almost the end of the word, station. So what kind of suffixes do we find in this case? Well, we have suffixes. made a mistake. Suffix. So we have the grammatical suffixes, which are the tenses, the numbers, the comparison. For example, he goes, or he fishes, or he's larger than, or he is the largest. Then we have the lexical suffixes, which create a new word. In this case, the case of kingdom. Dom has nothing to do with expressing any tense or possession, but rather a new word. We've got king, rey, kingdom, reign. And then the most typically used suffixes in English would be the er, like in officer, the ish, which is a tendency towards child. Childish is a tendency to be a child. Mania, which refers to an obsession. Eyes, which really makes the noun into a verb. And some, for example, grievesome, which also wholesome, referring to or regarding what is after before, which is the before, yes, some related to the word before. Grievesome, and that means there's some grief on the action that you've done, or there's a wholesome refers to the thing is entirely, or refers to the entire quantity, or the entire feature. Well, another process that we have to talk about is the compound words. Now, what are compound words? Compound words are the combination of two free morphemes, that is, two roots, and by combining both of them, the meaning actually changes. We'll see how this meaning changes when we have two words, and how the words or how the meaning changes according to one word, or whether we put one root or another. Really, compound doesn't really have a systematic base. There's no any rules on how to create words. There's just a combination of two separate words. For example, software and hardware. Really, there might be some kind of an explanation of why we use a hardware and a software, but really there's no relation at all or any rule at all which allow us to say, well, if we combine this word with another word, we would have another meaning. Usually the head of the compounds determines the category of the word. So that is, if, for example, dog food, if the head of the compound word is dog, dog is a noun, so dog food would be a noun. Whereas if we have had an adjective as a head, then the compound would be an adjective. Something is very interesting of English is that English is a head final language. That is, that the meaning of the word is not at the beginning of the word, at the beginning of the compound word, but rather at the end of the compound word. For example, the first aid kit, really, the one who gives the current meaning is the kit at the end, not the first one, the first aid. So it's the kit. They give us the actual meaning of the first aid kit. So really, English is a head final language because the second part of the compound really determines the category of the compound. Now, what kind of compounds can we find in English language? We've got those which are called the endocentric compounds and the exocentric compounds. The endocentric compounds, endo refers to something interior, that is, to something that goes back. In this case, we would have the head determines the meaning and the category of the word. In this case, the head of this compound is the first one, the first root, dog. Whereas exocentric compound really refers it refers to something outside of the word. So really, that means that if it's outside the word, that's not the meaning that results from combining two roots has nothing to do with both words, something different. So the meaning is outside the word. In this case, it's nest egg. Now, nest egg does not refer to the egg that is in the nest, but rather it's something, money that you have saved. So completely different from the original meaning. Well, the next aspect we would have to talk about in this theme is the microprocesses, which are different. There are many different kinds of microprocesses: the clipping, conversion, back formation, blending, reduplication, or the acronyms. Now, the clipping is a shortening of the word, and or we may shorten the word because it's too long, or because we don't think it's necessary to say so. For example, the word advertisement, we have cut it into ad, all the way the page. My pajamas, my PJs. My PJs, PG is another process of making a clipping word, a clipping process. Now, conversion refers to the process of making a word change of a grammatical unit. In this case, without any prefixation process, or without any affixation process. In this case, for example, water means agua, but also means watering the plants, or to water the plants, regar las plantas. So here, water is the same word for both the noun and the verb, so there's a conversion. Well, the back formation is also the process of forming a new word by removing affixes from other words, from the initial word. And in this case, it's just taking for example, any example of these, of a back formation. I don't know. Well, I'll tell you later, because if not, we're going to be losing time. Well, the verb diagnose from the older English, diagnosis. What we have here is that we have get rid of the is at the end of the word, and we have use an e, so to put a diagnose. Now, blending is mixturing two words into just one word. For example, this is a case of brunch, making the mixture between breakfast and lunch. And reduplication is using the sound and multiplying the sound 2 times, in the case of flip-flops. The acronym is using the first letter of a bunch of words meaning something. For example, the way of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We use the first letter in order to combine a new letter. Now, all of these would end my presentation of the theme number 10, in which what we have seen is a different, first, the evolution of the making of dictionaries, and how we include words into dictionaries, and also what we've seen is a different processes of making new words and the creation of new words. Now, this is very important when we are teachers, and also very important to make students realize of the word formation, because by making them realize of this process, which in some cases is just very has got a pattern or follows a pattern, the students may create their own words, which are existing words, and allow them to enrich their own vocabulary process. And this would be the end of today's theme. Have you got any question regarding this theme? A ver, Fernando, pregunta, ¿es derivation form o derivative morpheme? Derivative morpheme, perdón. Fernando, me pregunta qué es derivation of morpheme o derivative morpheme. Derivative morpheme, ¿ok? Derivative morpheme. El derivation of es el proceso. Derivative morpheme es la palabra. Exacto. Incorrectos. Gracias, Fernando. ¿Está aclarado? Bueno, este tema es muy interesante. La verdad es que creo que si lo tratáis desde un punto de vista lexicográfico o lingüístico, y analizando y poniendo ejemplos, puede ser un tema muy interesante para realizar en la oposición, siempre y cuando no uséis las típicas palabras o los típicos ejemplos, porque así lo que os permite, pues es mostrar un poco vuestra capacidad de hacer las cosas de otra manera, ¿no? Bueno, pues vamos entonces a pasar al siguiente tema, que sería el tema, hemos visto el 10, voy a cerrar aquí el tema 10, fuera el tema 10, y vamos a pasar al tema 11, ¿vale? Vamos allá. Vale, bueno, pues esto lo voy a quitar aquí arriba. Bueno, todo el mundo lo ve bien. El tema 11, the word as a linguistic sign, homonymy, synonymy, antonymy, and false friends. Bueno, este es otro tema también interesante para tratar. Aquí lo que vamos a ver, lo primero que vamos a tratar es a Ferdinand de Saussure y luego lo que vamos también a ver es el triángulo de Odgers and Richards, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, realmente este es un tema también bastante fácil. Aquí habrá que también tratar la Language Economy Rule, ¿vale? Que es la que nos permite, bueno, pues diferenciar palabras y sobre todo hacer de ciertas palabras que sean muy específicas para conceptos, ¿vale? Para contextos muy específicos. En este caso, pues lo veremos, ¿no? La palabra mouton y la palabra sheep es lo mismo y las dos están recogidas en el diccionario británico, de inglés. Pero mouton es más para un aspecto más de un contexto que tiene que ver más con un tipo de piel y el sheep pues es el término, digamos, genérico, ¿vale? Entonces, bueno, luego veremos el lexical creativity, que es la capacidad de crear nuevas palabras, que este último punto, el lexical creativity, justo lo podemos sacar del tema que acabamos de ver. Con los procesos de microprocess y macroprocess, realmente lo que permitimos es hacer nuevas palabras. Por lo tanto, podemos usar el tema 10 como parte del tema 11. ¿Vale? Y luego, pues, bueno, aparte de que también podemos decir que las nuevas palabras que se crean también se crean a través de la prensa, incluido, bueno, pues la prensa escrita, la prensa oral y los diferentes autores de literatura, ¿no? Bueno, pues vamos a empezar con el tema 11. Dejar que beba un poquito de agua, me aclare la voz. Right. Theme 11. The word as a linguistic sign, homonymy, synonymy, antonymy, false friends, and lexical creativity. So, what are we going to be looking at in this thing? First of all, it is necessary to have a look at semantics. What is semantics? What is the current relationship that semantics has with linguistics? We could also include here what we've seen in theme 10 about lexicography and lexicon could also is allowed to be included in this theme. And then we would keep on by looking at the different concepts such as homonymy and the two concepts that are explained within the homonymy regarding, for example, the polysemy, then the synonymy and the language economy rule, the antonymy and the gradation that exist within the antonymy, the false friends that are very important in the teaching of a language, because we usually find that the words are basically pronounced or sound similar to the words we have, and so when and the students get it wrong. And then finally, we will look at the lexical creativity. Lexical creativity refers more to the constructions of new words. Right. So, what is the first topic we're going to be dealing with is the school of thoughts regarding the lexical or the lexics. Now, first of all, we have the Ferdinand de Saussure's current of thought, which he made the difference between two different concepts: the signified and the signifier. The signified refer to the concept itself, that is, refer to the existing thing in reality, whereas a signifier was referred more to the words and to the current pronunciation of the concept. So, for example, if I was to think about a tree, the word tree, how it is written from the T to the end to the ending E, that is a signifier, and the way it is pronounced is also called a signifier. And the signified would be that image that we have of a tree. That image or that signifier would be different according to the culture and to the experience of each of the human beings. And so, and the next linguist that they also theorized about the meaning of lexemes and the construction of lexemes was Ogden and Richards. And they draw a triangle in which they make the relationship between three things. The first one was the reference, which is the existing thing in reality. Then we have the referent, which is the existing thing in reality. Then we have the symbol, which is how this concept is written or is pronounced, and finally referring to the experience, which is a reference to the experience associated to this referent. For example, if we were to speak of a shark would be the referent we have as these big fish with big jaws that eats people. The symbol would be whether the symbol of a shark or the word shark, and the reference. If you have seen Jaws, the film Jaws, then you would associate sharks with fear or with something dangerous. Now, what about the semantics? Well, semantics is the field of linguistics that studies the relationship between the words and the construction of meaning. And this is very important to understand why there's so many, or why there was this worry from Saussure and Audience and Richards to associate the word and the construction of meaning. So to get the current meaning correct and the use of the word correct, so to be understood. Now, semantics analyzes then how we experience the world and how we understand others and ourselves through words. So there's three ways of the three relationships that are made in linguistics, which is the syntagmatic affinity, the syntagmatic disaffinity, and the paradigmatic affinity. What is the meaning of the syntagmatic affinity? Well, the syntagmatic affinity is the usual association of words. That is the in other words, is to referring to the cohesion and coherence of between words. For example, if we use the word cat, we are going to be expecting something like words like meowing or beautiful or kittens and so on. So usually the cat meows or the dog barks. This is a syntagmatic affinity because there is a coherence between the one word and the other. Okay. Now, we also have the syntagmatic disaffinity, which refers to words that appear in the same sentence but do not have a cohesion between them. Saying we may understand the meaning of the sentence, but it doesn't sound natural to us. And this is something that usually happens when we are learning a language. We usually, when we use a language, we tend to use certain words that allow us to express the meaning or to express our ideas, but they're not used correctly in the sentence. In this case, the cats are barking. Well, we know that if we are speakers of English and we hear someone saying the cats are barking, we know that the person really wants to say that the cats are meowing, but really we don't understand. But the person uttering the sentence has not the word to has not the word or does not know the word of meowing, so then uses some a word that is similar, like barking, so to express the whole sentence. Now here we have a syntagmatic disaffinity, and then we have the paradigmatic affinity, which is the use of certain words that are not incorrect, or not the use of words in contexts, but they're not appropriate use. And this is in the case of I feed my cat or I feed my whale. Now, by both words are correct. Both words are used correctly, and the words and the sentences are totally understandable. However, if I use I feed my cat, well, the word feed is to give food to an animal, or to a person. Usually, I feed my cat is a more domestic use, and so it's not is coherent. Whereas if I say I feed my whale, that would sound a bit weird, because that would mean that we have a whale as a pet. Although, unless you're working in a zoo and you're saying, well, the whale is something that I'm looking after the whale, and I think the whale as something of mine, and so I feed my whale. So here the word feed and my and the pronoun my are probably in the second example. They're not currently well used. And so we in this case, although we understand the meaning, we have a paradigmatic affinity. Now, what the concept of the word is analyzed into what we've seen this again in theme number 10 is similar. There's a lot of similarities between theme number 10 and 11. Just again, quickly, there are three layers: the orthographical, the phonological, and the lexical. Orthography refers to how the word is written, phonological, how the word is pronounced, and lexical is the meaning of the word. So regarding a word is a combination of graphemes and also a combination of phonemes. Usually we don't have the matching of the grapheme with the phoneme because of these because English is not a language where you read it as you pronounce it. Well, it requires from you a special pronunciation. And so we have different types of morphemes. There are three morphemes, which are the roots, which are the words that can appear alone and has got a meaning by themselves, or the bound morphemes, which are a combination of letters that are joined to the root in order to produce another type of word. Right. So, what is the meaning of, or what is homonymy, and what is the difference between the homonymy concept and the polysemy concept? Well, what homonymy refers to words that have got the same spelling and the same pronunciation, but has two or more meanings. Now, homonymy refers to words that share the spelling, but morphologically are different. This is something different to polysemy, because homonymy is just referring to the word it's pronounced. And here it could be interesting also to introduce what we saw last Saturday about the minimal pairs. Although they are not homonymy words, it's also to give another idea that students might have the same problems as the minimal pairs. Usually, these minimal pairs that they share the same graphemes. Except for one word, from one sound, they may also have certain problems. But again, homonymy is more into how the word is formed, or how the word is constructed. That is the etymology of the word. Where does the word come from? The origins of this word. For example, the word saw is written for the same the past tense of the verb to see, and the two are written in the same way. Now here we have a case of homonymy, but not polysemy, because the word, or also the word polysemy could also be used in here, because the same word with the same spelling and the same sound could be used for different contexts. We also have the homophones. The homophones also refer to sounds that sounds equally, but the writing is different. For example, the word bear, which refers to the animal, and the word bare, which refers to more naked. Bare feet refers to feet to the feet that do not use any sort of shoes or socks. Now, polysemy refers to a word that has got different and that has multiple meanings, and there is a word that can be used in different contexts. Now, this is the case of the word bank. Bank has got the same etymology, has got the same origin, but is used in different contexts. We use the bank to refer to where we keep our money. We also refer the bank to the place where we sit, and we also refer the bank of the side of the rivers. Now, what is the difference between synonymy and polysemy? A synonymy are different words with one meaning, and polysemy is one word which has different meanings. Synonymy refers to words that might be used in the same context, but they have a different nuance. Whereas polysemy is just one word which has nothing, which has no whose etymological origin is does not change, and it could be applied in different contexts. Now, polysemy refers to meanings that has evolved from the same source, whereas homonymy refers to meanings from different origins that happens that today are pronounced equally, or they are used in, or they share the same way of writing, but they do not share the same history. Now, what is synonymy? Synonymy is refers to the nuances or the close nuances between words. Meanings that have got more or less related meanings. So they could be used in the same contexts, but really they're not. They're different. Now, there's a difference between three different concepts: pleonasm, cognitive synonyms, and the language economy rule. Now, what is a pleonasm? A pleonasm is really is a poetic rhetorical device that allows us to express a redundant idea. This, for example, is the white snow or snow white. Snow white, for example, is a pleonasm. We already know that the snow is white, or the burning fire. The burning fire is already burning. So again, it's just words that are used next to other words which already imply that meaning. So when we refer to fire, fire is already burning. So we don't need any other word to explain that the fire is burning. But in this case, we use the word burning so to emphasize that there is a fire that is burning. Now, cognitive synonyms are words that are equally that refer to something that is the same, and here I'm speaking about the word sheep and mouton. Now, and this is something that happens usually with languages that have been influenced by other languages. In the case of English, English is a language that has a great mixture of other languages because of its history. We know that the French. We know first that the Romans invaded the island until the year 5th century, and with the fall of Rome, the Romans left UK, but the Romans actually left a lot of Latin words and Latin terms. Then by the 10th century, the French invaded the island, and they stayed for over 200 or 250 years. Also, they gave a lot of the terms of nowadays English, and among those we've got this word of mouton, which comes from the French to really mean the same thing as a sheep. And then the Vikings and the Germans also. So these the cognitive synonyms happens in languages that are words that have got the same meanings, and their origin is different from from the language they come from. Now, that's why in some cases and in linguistics we have this process called as language economy rule. And now the language economy rule is very interesting because it refers to the fact of the languages try to be as efficient as possible, and so to use one word to identify one concept, and so to avoid having two concepts to refer to the same thing. Now, when there's two concepts referring to the same thing, there is an effect in language that tries to eliminate one of them. Whether and this language economy functions in two ways. Whether one word is eliminated, so throughout the years, there's kind of a battle between these two words, and one is eliminated, and then so it dies, if you want to, the term died, and the other is triumphant, so is kept in language, or one of them is specialized into a very particular context, and the other is the one used in the general concept. This is the case, for example, of sheep and mouton. Sheep they both refer to the same thing. Mouton in French means sheep, but mouton is only used for very specific contexts, as for example referring or regarding the fur of a coat, and sheep really refers to the general term. Then, so the nuances in synonymy could be emotional, could be prepositional, could be restrictive, or could be evoke. Now, emotional nuances refers to the difference, and this is why we need examples such as baby or infant. Both of them refer or means the same and refer to the same concept. But if we use the word baby, we are more referring to something more familiar. That is something that we really seek to make an impact onto our audience. So by using the word baby, we would rather be looking at or portray or projecting the image of a little girl or boy that has been given birth and is very indefensive. But if we look at the word infant, which is the same thing, would be a word where we try to get rid of the emotional aspect. Now, prepositional would be more of a word trying to convey an objective information and get rid of all the subjunctive or the subjective information. Eso está, no sé si está bien. Information, for example, the way using the infant or the baby. Restrictive is more of trying to use a word with another word, so to restrict the meaning. When we talk about, for example, wine, we've got three types of wine: rosé, red wine, or white wine. All of them mean the same. This is the alcoholic drink. But by using the white, red, or rosé, what we're doing is to restrict the meaning to any specific kind of wine. And finally, we've got the evoke meaning, which, for example, refers more to the dialects and the registers. The registers, we know that there is the formal register and the informal register. So here we have, if we were to speak or we were to hear a teenager speaking, they would rather use puke rather than vomit. Whereas if we hear a doctor or speaking, a doctor speaking, he would rather use vomit rather than a puke. Now, a dialect also is evoke meaning in the case because in this case because it's using a word that is typical from the region. In the case of, for example, in Scotland, they would use loch instead of lake. Well, what about the antonymy? The antonymy refers to the words that means the contrary, and there are three different categories: the relational antonymies, the graded antonymies, and the complementary. The relational antonymy refers to words or set of word couples, which by indicating one, we're indicating the opposite, or we're indicating the connection with the opposite. For example, if we say aunt, we are saying we're denying ankle, and the other way around, the same thing. So there's kind of a no, sorry. The relational refers that if I say aunt, I may refer then to ankle. So there's a sort of a relation between both, but they're not antonyms. They're related, but they're not opposites. So again, we have these nuances when we talk about antonymy. The graded antonym refers to words that may mean something different, but the meaning is graded. So, for example, hot, warm, and cool. Hot is the antonymy. The direct antonymy would be hot and cold. But if I say hot and warm, warm is also an antonymy of hot, but there's a gradation between hot, which is a very high temperature, and warm, which is mild temperature. Although it's not as hot as the word we imply as hot, but it's again could be considered as a graded antonymy. And finally, we've got the complementary antonymies, which refer to those antonymies which are completely opposite. That by saying one, we deny the other. Boy, girl, or black or white. Right. The next one, the next aspect we would deal with is the false friends. False friends are words that are used in the language, and they're used by the learners of a language, and they're used incorrectly in a context. And they're used incorrectly because the learner thinks that that word and the sounding of that word is similar to the word in his own mother tongue. But he uses incorrectly because they sound similar and they look similar, and so the actual tendency of the human mind is then to say, well, why not to apply this word to this context because it's the same. Well, and this happens very often when we are learning a language, and it's errors that are particularly characteristics of the interlanguage periods. Now we have positive false friends, which are not called then false friends, which refers to words that are actually the same thing in the mother tongue and the target language. For example, similar would be similar in Spanish would be the same thing. There's a positive false friends there. That would not be a false friend because there is a match between the two languages. But a false friend as such would be those words that sound alike, but their meaning is completely different. For example, the way of steer and remove. Steer would be remover, whereas remove refers more to quitar. Well, and then we have what is called the creation, the lexical creation. When we have the lexical creation, we refer back again to the theme number 11. To the theme number 10. And the theme number 10 refers again to the macro processes and the micro processes. Macro processes are the affixation processes by which we add prefixes and suffixes to the roots, and the compounding, which is making a new word by combining two roots. Now, the micro processes are those processes they're called micro because it's just making words or shortening the words, or just modifying the words into more or less quantity of words. In this case, clipping, which is cutting the word; conversion, which is using one word in two kinds of words, in two categories of word; but back formation, which is also again cutting one word and adding another prefix; blending, mixing two sounds; mixing two words, reduplication, which is the duplication of another word, an acronym, which is using the initial words of a word, of a different bunch of words or set of words. And, well, how does a neologism become accepted? How does a new word become accepted? Well, in Spain, we use the Real Academia de la Lengua, who is the one who approves this use of a new word by including this word into the dictionary. If it's included into the RAE dictionary, then that word is accepted. In English, there's no RAE as such, but rather it's accepted in a way people use it and become very common to be used. And so they are validated, for example, when institutions start to accept them. So when the words are already accepted by any public institution, then the word is validated. Well, the microprocesses that we have already seen, and finally the conclusion. Well, we arrived to the end of this theme, giving quite a lot of importance to this, to the fact of making a difference between the antonymy and the synonymy process, and paying a lot of attention to the language economy rule. Every language has their own economy rule because we cannot, as learners, learn two words to identify one concept, one concept, because that would be inefficient. Then there would not be, we would not be ready to have a communication because there might be a lot of words referring to the same current concept. So this is the concept of the language economy rule is something to bear in mind when we learn a language. But as teachers, what we really need to pay attention to is the antonymy and synonym, the antonymy and the polysemy of the words, and explaining the students how the words or where the words come from. So, in order to make them aware of the different nuances that exist in words. And so this is the end of theme 11. Have you got any questions? Going to drink a bit of water. No, right, good. Bueno, pues entonces voy a quitar esto, lo cierro y vamos a compartir ahora el siguiente, que sería el último, que sería el 22, el multi-word verbs, ¿vale? Este también es interesante. Este tema guarda cierta relación con el tema 19, pero también con estos temas del tema 10 y el tema 11, porque también estamos hablando de el word formation, y entonces hablamos de los multi-word verbs, de los phrasal verbs, que también son una forma nueva de crear nuevos verbos, porque realmente cuando creamos los phrasal verbs y los modal verbs y los prepositional verbs, lo que hacemos es quitar el sentido original del verbo y darle un sentido nuevo. Entonces voy a compartiros el PowerPoint. Bueno, so, the multi-word verbs. Cuando hablamos de este tema, como decíamos antes, sería interesante también en vuestra introducción que nos refiramos un poco también al verbal group, al tema 19, que trata sobre el sintagma verbal. Porque realmente, cuando hablamos de este tipo de verbos, lo que nos vamos a encontrar aquí también es la combinación que tenemos con los phrasal verbs, con los primary auxiliary verbs, con los operators y con los lexical verbs. Entonces, hay un montón de cosas o un montón de conceptos que tienen que ver con la misma historia y que sería, bueno, pues interesante relacionarlo, pues diciendo pues que este tema guarda relación primero con los tiempos, con la formación del grupo verbal, pero que también guarda relación con el tema 11 y 10, o 10 y 11, por el hecho de la creación de las nuevas palabras, de nuevos verbos, y por a lo mejor posiblemente una posible synonymy, ¿vale? Entre los phrasal verbs y los verbos y los lexical verbs, porque hay ciertos lexical verbs que son lexical verbs que a lo mejor están latinizados o afrancesados, que implican lo mismo que lo que se han creado, que estos nuevos phrasal verbs, ¿no? Entonces, a lo mejor aquí podemos encontrarnos que en el Language Economy Rule no hay una cierta eficacia. Pero claro, todo vuelve a ser un poco, volvemos a hablar que depende del contexto, porque los phrasal verbs son de un contexto más informal y los verbos más latinos son más de contextos más formales, más científicos. Right, so according to this theme, what we're going to be looking at this theme is divided into 6 different aspects. The first one we will be dealing with the verbal group, then the multi-word verbs, then the phrasal prepositional verbs, which is a combination of the previous ones, the problems with multi-word verbs, and finally the conclusion. So first of all, let's have a look at the verbal group. Now the verbal group refers to is a grammatical unit that expresses our perception of events. Now, when we deal with the verbal group, this group is the one that in linguistics and in syntax allows the speakers to actually convey meanings in the present, in the past, or to express a modality. Whereas whereas is the future, a doubt, obligation, or absence of obligation. Now the verbal group allow the speaker to express an event or an activity or even an act of consciousness. Now the verbal group is made up of the lexical verb and the auxiliaries. The lexical verb is actually the verb that we want to, the action that we want to express. But this action needs to be conjugated or needs to be expressed in terms of tense or in terms of modality. And so what we use to express the time of the modality, we use the so-called primary auxiliaries. We use the auxiliaries, which are divided into the primary auxiliaries or the modal auxiliaries. The primary auxiliaries, that are these three verbs: the verb to be, the verb to do, and the verb to have. The verb to be allows to express the speaker progressiveness, so allows to express progressiveness and also the passive voice. We use the present continuous, the past continuous, and the passives. The primary auxiliary have allows to express perfectiveness, so allows to express actions that have occurred and to make the difference between which action has happened first and which has happened later on. And finally, the verb to do allows to express allows the speakers to make negatives and questions. Now, the modal auxiliaries on the other side, the modal auxiliaries express something different. They allow to construct what we call as the modality, and what we call the modality allows to express the speaker the doubts or also the future or obligation with, for example, the must or the have to, or the absence of obligation, or recommendations or suggestions with a should or the may. Now, the verbal group also has a very fixed construction that goes from the lexical verb as such in an affirmative sentence when we want to express something in the present, to a more complex construction, for example, which would be the fourth of the fourth point, which is the operator plus the two auxiliaries plus the lexical verb. The operator would be the one expressing the modality, in this case the future or the doubt, plus the primary auxiliary, which expresses a perfective aspect, and the second auxiliary, which is the been, which also refers to a more progressive, will have been making. The verbs are followed by a preposition. Now, the verbs are followed by a preposition refers to verbs that lexical verbs that goes along with prepositions that could be swapped or could be changed in any case. And if the preposition is changed, then the meaning of the sentence is changed. So these verbs that are followed by a preposition, they're not called a multi-word verbs. They're just verbs followed by a preposition. It's not the same when we have the current sentence of Brian went into the room and Brian went past the room. If I say Brian went into the room, the preposition here changes the meaning. And this preposition has nothing to do or is not related whatsoever with the lexical verb. It's just that it functions into the room. This functions as a complement in informing that Brian got into the room. So it has access through the room. Whereas on the second sentence, Brian went past the room, another preposition that in the meaning is not related to the verb, just related to the action or just complementing the action. Went past the room, that means that he did not enter the room, as in the first example. So the non-multi-word verbs can follow by two-sentence pattern. First one, the verb plus the preposition plus a noun. For example, the baby happily sat on the mat. Now, on the mat is a prepositional group, on the mat, which performs the function of a complement of place. We also have a second sentence, which is the verb plus the preposition plus a single pronoun, which is also a word order that is also accepted by the lexical verbs. For example, the baby happily sat on it. It is replacing the mat, and also on it would also be a prepositional phrase which performs the function of a complement of place. However, these lexical verbs followed by a preposition cannot allow the following structures. For example, the baby happily sat the mat on. Here, there is no correspondence between the preposition and the following noun phrase. So there's a complete the word order would be wrong because it hasn't got a meaning, hasn't got a sense. And the same happens with the second structure, the verb plus the pronoun plus the preposition. For example, the baby happily sat it on. Again, there's no way of understanding the sentence. The preposition here performs a complement which is expressing where the baby's happily sat. So there is is complementing the information of the sat, but is not modifying the meaning of sat. Now, what about the prepositional verbs? When we talk about the prepositional verbs, we talk about these, they have a very specific structure, which is a lexical verb followed by a preposition. And these prepositional verbs, they are used with a preposition because they go beyond the literal meaning. They actually mean what is the lexical verb, but they actually require of this preposition. Right, for example, if I say the headmaster coped with the issue, cope was to deal with the issue, or to deal needs with the preposition with. Now here, the preposition with is not changing the meaning of the lexical verb. It's not affecting the meaning of the verb, but the verb really needs from this preposition to get the sentence correct. We could not say the headmaster coped the issue. Now the headmaster listened the issue, we have to use the to, the word, the preposition, in order to make the sentence correct. So they can, in these cases, with these prepositional verbs, they cannot be separated. So that means that the preposition has to go immediately after the verb. For example, we cannot say the headmaster coped the issue with carefully. That hasn't got a meaning. That has not got a sense. Usually, these verbs, just look after, cope with, get on, depend on, go into, look for, are verbs that are almost function as almost collocation. They require, or they need, of these prepositions in order to build up the sentence. And it's not because of the meaning of the sentence, but rather a more syntactical aspect of the sentence. So regarding this syntax meaning, what we have, for example, is this word order. This word order, for example, the verb plus the preposition plus the noun. For example, the headmaster coped with the issue carefully. Now here we have the cope with, it goes together, and we cannot change the word order, because then the meaning would be different and the syntax would not be correct. And the same happens with if we change the issue for it. Here, what we have is the prepositional phrase, which is with the issue carefully, functions as a complement of the verb, not of the subject of the noun. Well, what about the phrasal verbs? Now, phrasal verbs is something completely different of what we have seen before. The phrasal verbs is the lexical verb plus an adverb or a particle. Now, the phrasal verbs, and linguists prefer to say, instead of an adverb, they like to call it a particles, because not always we have an adverb. This particle can be performed by adverbs or by prepositions. That depends on the meaning. And the actual meaning of the phrasal verbs here is the ones which actually does not mean the same thing as the current meaning of the lexical verb. And so the phrasal verbs, they do accept the separation between the preposition or between the particle and the verb. For example, in the example, they call the meeting off, or they call off the meeting. Here, the phrasal verb, they do accept these separation. Now, the word order accepted by phrasal verbs is multiple. We have the verb plus the particle plus the noun. He put down his book. Or the verb plus the noun plus the particle. He put his book down. Or the verb plus the pronoun plus the particle. He put it down. So phrasal verbs are more, that's why they're considered more informal. We can use them and we can separate them without any problem and without any worry of modifying the current meaning of the word or the sentence. Well, what is then the difference between the prepositional verbs and the phrasal verbs? Now, phrasal verbs doesn't need an object, whereas the prepositional verbs always carry the object after the preposition, and this is because the preposition always needs something else to complement the action of the verb. For example, I bought a new great CD. Shall we listen to it? Now, to it, the preposition here, shall we listen to it? The preposition to needs the it, so to really understand the whole meaning, so to complement the sentence and to have it syntactically correct. We may say, shall we listen? Or shall we listen? That would be correct in the oral language, but really when we write it, we really need to link the words. So in order to link and to fix the meaning. Though it might sound for us correct, the current use of language or the current rules of language is that we need to link the phrases between themselves in order to fix the meaning of the sentence. Now, phrasal verbs also admit the place of the object between or before the particle, as we have seen before. Prepositional verbs do not allow that modification and do not allow that movement. For example, are you looking at every new term, or are you looking every new term up? That look up is a phrasal verb that refers to investigate, to know the meaning of something. Whereas, for example, look after is not a phrasal verb, but rather a prepositional verb. Look after really is mirar después de. So really is not the meaning of the verb in look after is not metaphorical, but rather is interesting to see that look is referring to observe, and after refers to afterwards. So it really to observe something afterwards. So look after functions as a prepositional verb, whereas not rather as a phrasal verb. There is no metaphorical meaning in phrasal verbs. That's why look after cannot be separated. Sorry. Now, the phrasal prepositional verbs, these ones are the ones who are a combination of the previous phrasal verbs and prepositional verbs. These phrasal prepositional verbs are phrasal verbs that include a preposition because the preposition needs to complement the current phrasal verb. Now, the structure of this is that there is a verb plus a particle followed by a preposition. Now, the meaning is sometimes impossible to know only by the literal meaning of individual parts. The meaning has long gone ago, and so we need to learn these phrasal prepositional verbs by heart. In this case, the phrasal prepositional verbs, the particle and the preposition cannot be separated, and they are used in very informal contexts. Let's have a look at the different examples we've got. The couple put up with the deeds after the honeymoon. Put up with the deeds, put up would be our phrasal verbs, but we need to complement this put up. We need to complement this phrasal verb. So what we do is to add a with as a complement of the phrasal verb. So now we are dealing with not a phrasal verb, but rather a phrasal prepositional verb. In some cases, we may have these alteration in the word order. For example, she fixed us up with a violin teacher. Because again, this is allowed because the origin of these phrasal prepositional verbs is from the phrasal verbs. So really allow to have a certain modifications within this structure of the phrasal prepositional verbs. Now, sentences or structures that are not allowed are the ones who have before, the verb plus the object, plus the particle, plus the preposition. For example, the couple put the deeds up with. That's wrong. In this case, the put up with it's a complete verbal group that really needs to be together in order to understand. Because if not, the deeds would only affect the puts, the verbal group put, and so put deeds that would mean completely different to the actual or the current idea of put up with the deeds. Now, again happens with the second word order. For example, the verb plus the pronoun plus the particle plus the preposition, which is actually the same thing as the first example, where he says he put them up with. Again, in this example, the pronoun is going to affect only the word put. So the meaning of with and the up with then would not be are not being modified by them, and so they in a metaphorical way, up with would be a bit would not have any word or any noun phrase to attach to, so they will lose the meaning. And finally, we've got the he put up them with. Again, if we use this combination of words, then we put up it has a different meaning as put up with. So we would be saying that he put up debt the meaning of the sentence would be, or these would be modifying put up, not put up with. So the meaning would actually change. Now, what are the problems that we have with multi-word verbs? Well, the problems is first the multi-word prepositions. We have prepositions that are a combination of two because we need to complement these prepositions. For example, next to, or in between, or in front of, or apart from. All of these, they are prepositions that function as collocations, and they need to have to be joined by these two words. So to complement the meaning that we want. So they may have some problem when we regard these multi-word prepositions with the multi-word verbs. For example, my mom sat away from my aunt at the wedding. My mom sat away in here, sat away from. If I were to analyze these sentences emphatically, all I can say is that there is the subject is my mom and the verb is sat, and away from my aunt would be another. It would be a complement of the space, and at the wedding would be a complement of time. So away from does not actually affect the verb, but rather the complement, the prepositional phrase. The same happens with the particles and prepositions occurring together. For example, Lily put the photograph up in the dining room. Here, the up does not have to do anything with the put. Put is just a put up is implying that the photograph is up in the shelf and nothing else. There's no meaning of putting up. There's no phrasal verb going on there. Is that up is functioning as a complement of place. Now, we would arrive then at the conclusion in saying that this aspect or this theme is rather complex to our students. Really, the differences between the multi-word verbs, the phrasal and lexical verbs is very difficult and requires of a great syntactic knowledge. So I rather not touch or not explain to the students this theme in such syntactic terms. I would rather go through a more learning some of these phrasal verbs by heart and using the phrasal verbs that are more used at their ages. So trying to do a bit of investigation of which phrasal verbs are the most used by the British or the Anglo-Saxon community, or the Anglo-Saxon teenage community, and so try to explain to the students the meaning of these phrasal verbs or the meaning of these multi-word verbs. Well, this is the end of today. This is a bibliography that I've used to reflect upon this theme. Have you got any questions regarding this theme?